The champagne flute slipped from Marcus Bellmont's fingers first, the crystal shattering against the marble with a sound that cut through the orchestra's waltz like a scream. Elena Rodriguez was carrying a tray of canapés when she saw it happen. The way his eyes rolled back, the slight tremor in his left hand before his knees buckled. Time seemed to crystallize in that moment, the golden chandeliers of the Grandview Hotel's ballroom casting everything in a surreal, honeyed glow as one of New York's most powerful men crumpled to the floor in his $10,000 tuxedo. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. The gala had been in full swing for 2 hours. 500 of the city's elite had gathered for the annual Children's Hospital charity auction, their laughter echoing off the vaulted ceilings while they bid astronomical sums on weekend getaways and signed memorabilia. Elena had been weaving between them all night, invisible in her crisp white shirt and black bow tie, balancing silver trays while her feet ached in the dress shoes she'd bought secondhand 3 years ago. She knew most of these people by sight if not by name, the investment bankers who tipped in $100 bills, the society wives who never made eye contact, the tech moguls who spoke about changing the world while stepping around the homeless on their way into the building. Marcus Bellmont was different, or at least he had seemed different. The 62-year-old real estate magnate had built his empire from nothing. Everyone knew that story. The son of a factory worker from Detroit who had clawed his way to a fortune worth $3 billion. He was known for his sharp tongue in boardrooms but also for his unexpected kindnesses. The college funds he'd quietly established for his employees' children, the apartments he'd kept rent-controlled despite pressure from his board. Elena had served him before at other events, and unlike most, he'd actually looked at her, really looked at her, and said thank you like he meant it. Now he was dying on the ballroom floor, and everyone was frozen. Dr. Patricia Chen was the first to move, her emerald evening gown rustling as she pushed through the crowd, her medical training overriding her shock. She dropped to her knees beside Marcus, her fingers searching for a pulse at his throat. "Call 911, she shouted. But several people were already fumbling for their phones, their hands shaking as they tried to dial. Elena set down her tray on the nearest table, barely registering the way the champagne glasses rattled. She'd seen this before. Not here, not in this glittering palace of wealth, but in her uncle's garage 5 years ago. The same gray pallor spreading across the skin, the same labored, inefficient breathing. Her uncle had died because they'd waited for the ambulance, because no one had known what to do in those crucial minutes. "He's in cardiac arrest," Dr. Chen announced, immediately beginning chest compressions. "Someone find an AD." The hotel manager, a thin man named Harrison who usually carried himself with unshakable composure, was already running toward the lobby where the automated external defibrillator was mounted on the wall. But Elena knew that wouldn't be enough. She'd taken the CPR certification course 3 times, once for her high school health class, once when her daughter was born, and again last year when the hotel had offered free training to all staff. She knew that chest compressions alone had a success rate of less than 10%. She knew that what happened in the next 60 seconds would determine whether Marcus Bellmont lived or died. Without thinking, Elena pushed through the circle of gawkers. "I can help," she said, dropping to her knees opposite Dr. Chen. Several guests gasped. Margaret Ashworth, the senator's wife, actually stepped backward as if Elena's proximity was offensive even in crisis. "Are you trained?" Dr. Chen asked without looking up, her arms already trembling from the effort of compressions. "Yes, let me take over when you need a break. 2-minute intervals, right?" Dr. Chen nodded, counting out loud. 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. She tilted Marcus's head back, pinched his nose, and gave 2 rescue breaths. His chest rose and fell, but there was no spontaneous breathing. Elena watched the technique, her mind cataloging every detail. The placement of Dr. Chen's hands, the depth of compression, the rhythm. Around them, the crowd had grown silent except for scattered whispers and the distant sound of someone crying. The orchestra had stopped playing, the musicians standing uncertainly with their instruments hanging at their sides. "Switch," Dr. Chen said after another 30 compressions. Elena didn't hesitate. She positioned her hands on Marcus's chest, one palm over the other, fingers interlocked. The first compression felt wrong, too violent, too invasive. She could feel his ribs flex under her hands. The strange intimacy of touching someone who 20 minutes ago had been discussing his new development project with the mayor. But she pushed harder, finding the rhythm. 1, 2, 3, 4. Harder, Dr. Chen instructed. You need to compress at least 2 inches. Don't be afraid of breaking ribs. Broken ribs heal. Death doesn't. Elena adjusted her pressure, putting her whole body weight into each compression. She could feel the sweat beading on her forehead, her arms already burning, but she didn't stop. She thought of her daughter, Sophia, asleep at home with Mrs. Chen from next door watching her. She thought of her uncle, gone too soon. She thought of all the times she'd served these people, invisible and dismissed, and how none of that mattered now. Right now, she was the only thing standing between Marcus Bellmont and the void. Harrison returned with the AED, his face flushed from running. Dr. Chen grabbed it, tearing open Marcus's shirt, the buttons scattering across the marble like pearls from a broken necklace. She placed the pads on his chest, one on the upper right, one on the lower left side. "Everyone stand back," she commanded. Elena lifted her hands, rocking back on her heels. The machine's automated voice filled the ballroom, analyzing rhythm. "Do not touch patient." The seconds stretched like hours. Elena could see Marcus's wife, Victoria, being held up by their son James, her face a mask of terror. She could see the other waitstaff pressed against the walls, some of them crying. She could see her manager, Roberto, wringing his hands, probably calculating the liability, the reputation damage, the possibility of lawsuits. Shock advised. "Stand clear." Dr. Chen pressed the button. Marcus's body convulsed, his back arching off the floor. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the AED spoke again. "Continue CPR." Elena immediately resumed compressions, her movements automatic now, muscle memory taking over. She counted out loud this time, her voice steady despite the chaos in her chest. She was dimly aware of the crowd pressing closer, of cameras flashing. Someone was taking pictures, the vultures, of voices murmuring about whether he was going to make it. 29, 30, she said, and Dr. Chen gave 2 more rescue breaths. They continued like this for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Elena's arms were screaming, her back ached, her knees hurt against the hard floor. But she didn't stop. She and Dr. Chen had fallen into a rhythm, a partnership born of necessity. They switched positions every 2 minutes, neither speaking except to count, both focused entirely on the man between them. It was during Elena's 3rd set of compressions that she felt it. A flutter beneath her hands, like a bird trying to escape a cage. "I think," she started to say, but then Marcus gasped, a horrible, beautiful sound that filled the ballroom like a symphony. His eyes flew open, unfocused and wild. He tried to sit up, but Dr. Chen held him down gently. "Don't move, Mr. Bellmont. You've had a cardiac event. The ambulance is on its way." The paramedics arrived then, bursting through the ballroom doors with their gurney and equipment. They took over smoothly, professionally, hooking Marcus up to monitors, starting in 4, preparing him for transport. Elena stepped back, her legs shaking so badly she thought she might fall. Her white shirt was soaked with sweat, her bow tie askew, her carefully pinned hair falling around her face. As they lifted Marcus onto the gurney, his eyes found hers. He couldn't speak. There was an oxygen mask over his face, but he raised one trembling hand toward her. Elena stepped forward, taking his hand briefly, feeling the weak but steady pulse in his wrist. Then the paramedics were wheeling him away, Victoria and James following, and the ballroom erupted in chaos. The aftermath was immediate and overwhelming. People surrounded Elena, some congratulating her, others simply staring as if she were some exotic creature they'd never seen before. She heard fragments of conversation. "Just a waitress. Where did she learn? Quite remarkable. Saved his life." But it all seemed to come from very far away. Roberto appeared at her elbow, his face a mixture of pride and concern. "Elena, are you all right? Do you need to sit down?" She shook her head, though in truth she felt like she might vomit. The adrenaline was wearing off. leaving her shaky and cold despite the warmth of the ballroom. "I need some air," she managed to say. Of course. Take all the time you need. In fact, why don't you go home? We can manage the rest of the evening." Elena wanted to protest. She needed the hours, needed the money. But she could see in Roberto's eyes that this wasn't really a suggestion. She was no longer just a waitress now. She was the waitress who had saved Marcus Bellmont's life, and that made her something else entirely, something that didn't quite fit in the careful hierarchy of the evening. She gathered her things from the staff room, her hands still trembling as she pulled on her coat. The other servers looked at her differently now. Maria, who usually barely acknowledged her, squeezed her shoulder. Tommy, the bartender, gave her a silent nod of respect. She walked out through the service entrance, avoiding the main lobby where she could still hear the excited chatter of guests. The October night was crisp, the air sharp enough to cut through the fog in her head. Elena walked slowly to the subway station, her legs still unsteady. She kept replaying the moment in her mind. The weight of Marcus's chest under her hands, the counting, the terrible silence between compressions when everyone held their breath. Had she really saved him? Or had it been Dr. Chen? Or the AED? Or just luck? Plain dumb luck that his heart had decided to start again? Elena's apartment in Queens was exactly 43 minutes from the Grandview Hotel by subway, assuming no delays. She'd made this journey over 300 times in the past 2 years, her body automatically navigating the transfer at Times Square, her feet knowing exactly where to stand on the platform so she'd be at the right exit when the train stopped. But tonight, the familiar rhythm was broken. Tonight, she sat on the orange plastic seat and saw her own reflection in the dark window. A 34-year-old woman with her grandmother's eyes and her father's stubborn chin, her white server's shirt wrinkled and stained with sweat, looking like she'd just run a marathon. Mrs. Chun from next door was watching Jeopardy when Elena quietly opened her apartment door. The older woman looked up, her kind face creasing with concern. "You're early. Everything okay?" "There was an incident at work," Elena said, not ready to explain. "Nothing bad. Is Sophia asleep?" "For an hour now. That girl. She fought it hard, wanted to wait up for Mama. I read her 3 stories before she gave in." Elena paid Mrs. Chun the $20 they'd agreed on, though the woman tried to refuse as she always did. After she left, Elena stood in the doorway of Sophia's room, watching her 5-year-old daughter sleep. Sophia had Elena's dark hair but her father's nose. One of the few good things David had left behind before he disappeared to California with promises to send money that never came. In sleep, Sophia looked even younger, her small hand clutching the stuffed rabbit Elena had bought at Goodwill and carefully washed and mended until it looked almost new. The apartment was small, 1 bedroom that she shared with Sophia, a living room that doubled as a dining room, a kitchen so narrow 2 people couldn't pass each other, a bathroom with a tub that took forever to drain. The walls were thin enough that she could hear Mr. Petrov's television upstairs and the Johnsons' baby crying next door. But it was theirs, or at least it would be for another month if she could make rent. Elena changed out of her work clothes and into sweatpants and an old college t-shirt from the 2 semesters she'd managed before dropping out when her mother got sick. She made herself a cup of tea with the good tea bags she saved for special occasions, though she wasn't sure if tonight qualified as special or terrifying. Her hands were steady now, but she could still feel the phantom pressure of Marcus Bellmont's chest beneath them. She thought about calling her sister in New Jersey, but Carmen would be putting her own kids to bed. She thought about calling her mother in Florida, where she'd moved after retirement to live with Elena's aunt. But her mother would worry, would ask if she was in trouble, would offer to send money she didn't have. Instead, Elena sat at her small kitchen table, the one with the wobbly leg she kept meaning to fix, and opened her laptop. Marcus Bellmont cardiac arrest. No results yet. The news hadn't broken, but she did find plenty about Marcus himself. The official biography on his company website, Bellmont Development Group. The profiles in Forbes and the Wall Street Journal. The society pages showing him and Victoria at various galas, always smiling, always polished. But Elena found herself drawn to the older articles, the ones from 20 years ago when he was just starting to make a name for himself. There was one profile from the Times that caught her attention. It talked about his childhood in Detroit, his father's death in a factory accident when Marcus was 15, how he'd worked 3 jobs to put himself through college. There was a quote that made Elena pause. "I never forget where I came from. Every decision I make, I think about what my father would say, whether he'd be proud. He taught me that money isn't the measure of a man. It's what you do when no one's watching that counts." Elena wondered what Marcus's father would have thought about tonight. About his son collapsed on a ballroom floor while hundreds of millionaires stood frozen, saved by a waitress and a doctor who didn't hesitate. Her phone buzzed. A text from Roberto. "Hope you're okay. Take tomorrow off if you need. Paid. You did good tonight, Elena." Paid leave? Roberto never gave paid leave. Elena stared at the message, unsure whether to be grateful or suspicious. In her experience, unexpected kindness from employers usually came with strings attached. She was about to close her laptop when an email notification popped up. The sender made her freeze. Victoria Bellmont. "Dear Ms. Rodriguez, I got your contact information from the hotel. I wanted to thank you for what you did tonight. The doctors at Mount Sinai tell me that without immediate CPR, my husband would not have survived. They're keeping him for observation, but he's stable, awake, and asking about the woman who saved his life. I know it's late, and I'm sure you're exhausted, but if you could find time tomorrow, Marcus would very much like to thank you in person. I would as well. With deepest gratitude, Victoria Bellmont." Elena read the email 3 times. The woman who had never once acknowledged her existence in 2 years of serving at various events now knew her name, was writing to her, was expressing gratitude. It felt surreal, like she'd slipped into some alternate universe where the invisible became visible. Sophia stirred in her sleep, mumbling something about butterflies. Elena closed the laptop and went to lie down beside her daughter, careful not to wake her. Sophia automatically curled into her, her small hand finding Elena's in the darkness. This was real, Elena thought. This tiny hand, this steady breathing, this moment. Everything else, the gala, the rescue, the email, felt like a dream she might wake from. But she didn't sleep. Instead, she lay awake thinking about the rhythm of chest compressions, about the weight of a life in her hands, about what it meant to be seen after so long being invisible. She thought about her Uncle Miguel, who hadn't been lucky enough to have someone who knew CPR nearby when his heart stopped. She thought about all the times she'd wanted to be more than just the woman carrying trays, smiling politely, cleaning up other people's messes. The next morning came too soon. Sophia woke at 6:30 as she always did, bright and chattery, wanting breakfast and cartoons and answers to a dozen questions about why clouds were white and whether fish got thirsty. Elena moved through the morning routine, cereal with the last of the milk, braiding Sophia's hair for kindergarten, finding matching socks in the chaos of their shared dresser. But her mind kept drifting to Victoria's email. "Mama, are you listening?" Sophia asked, tugging on Elena's sleeve. "Of course, Mija. You were telling me about the class hamster." "No, I was asking if we can get a hamster. Lily has one and it's so cute and I would take care of it, I promise." "We'll see," Elena said, which was what she always said when she couldn't afford something. Sophia was too young to understand that "we'll see" meant probably never. But someday she would, and that knowledge sat like a stone in Elena's chest. After dropping Sophia at school, the public kindergarten 8 blocks away, not the fancy private schools where people like the Bellmonts sent their children, Elena stood on the sidewalk, unsure what to do with her unexpected day off. She should go home, do laundry, clean the bathroom, prepare meals for the week. But instead, she found herself on the subway heading to Mount Sinai Hospital. The contrast between the hospital's private wing and the emergency room where Elena had once waited 6 hours with a broken wrist was stark. Here, the floors gleamed, original artwork hung on the walls, and the nurses moved with unhurried precision. Elena felt out of place in her jeans and cardigan, her good clothes all being work clothes. She found Marcus's room at the end of a quiet hallway. Through the partially open door, she could hear voices, Victoria's cultured tones and Marcus's rougher Detroit accent, though weaker than usual. Elena raised her hand to knock, then hesitated. What was she doing here? What did she expect to happen? "I know you're out there," Marcus's voice called out. Might as well come in. Elena pushed open the door, heat rising to her cheeks. Marcus was propped up in bed, looking pale but alert, various monitors attached to his chest. Victoria sat in a chair beside him, her usual perfect composure slightly cracked. Her hair less than perfectly styled, her designer dress wrinkled. Ms. Rodriguez, Victoria stood, and to Elena's complete shock embraced her. Not an air kiss or a formal handshake, but a real embrace, the kind where she could feel the other woman trembling slightly. Thank you, Victoria whispered against her ear. Thank you for giving me back my husband. When Victoria pulled back, her eyes were wet. She quickly dabbed at them with a tissue, composing herself. I'll leave you two to talk. I need coffee anyway. She squeezed Marcus's hand, then left, her heels clicking on the linoleum. Elena stood awkwardly near the door, unsure whether to sit or stand, speak or wait. Marcus studied her with those sharp eyes that had built an empire, though they seemed softer now, more vulnerable. So, he said finally, you saved my life. Dr. Chen helped, and the AED. You just kept my blood flowing when everyone else stood there like statues. Marcus interrupted. Don't minimize it. The doctors told me. Another 2 minutes without CPR and I'd have been brain dead even if they got my heart started again. Elena moved closer, taking the chair Victoria had vacated. Up close, she could see the bruising on Marcus's chest from the compressions, dark purple marks she had put there. I'm sorry about your ribs. I heard one crack. Marcus actually laughed, then winced. 3 cracked ribs, actually. They'll heal. Like the doc said last night, broken ribs heal, death doesn't. He paused, his expression growing serious. Why did you do it? What do you mean? You could have stood back like everyone else. You're not medical personnel. If something had gone wrong, if I died anyway, you might have been blamed, sued. Why risk it? Elena thought about the question, about all the possible answers. Because it was the right thing to do. Because she knew how. Because she'd watched someone die from inaction before. But what came out was simpler, more honest. Because you were dying, and I could help. Marcus nodded slowly, as if she'd passed some kind of test. Tell me about yourself, Elena. May I call you Elena? Of course. But there's not much to tell. I'm a single mom. I wait tables and serve at events. I'm trying to save enough to go back to school someday. What were you studying? Nursing, actually. But then my mom got sick, and I had to work, and then I had Sophia, my daughter, and... She shrugged. Life happened. Marcus was quiet for a moment, his fingers drumming lightly on the hospital blanket. Elena recognized the gesture. She'd seen him do the same thing at events when he was thinking through a business deal. I want to do something for you, he said finally. A reward or... No, Elena said quickly. I don't want money. I didn't do it for money. I know that. That's what makes it remarkable. But Elena, I'm a man who pays his debts, and I owe you the biggest debt there is. Let me help you. I should go. Elena stood. You need rest. Elena. His voice stopped her at the door. I'm not going to forget this. I'm not going to forget you. She nodded, not trusting herself to speak, and left. In the elevator, she caught her reflection again in the polished steel doors. Same woman as yesterday, same tired eyes, same stubborn chin. But something had shifted. Some invisible line had been crossed. She'd been seen. The first sign that Elena's life had fundamentally changed came 3 days later, when she returned to her regular shift at the Grandview Hotel. Roberto met her at the service entrance, his usually stern face creased with an expression she couldn't quite read, somewhere between pride and concern. Elena, we need to talk, he said, leading her not to the usual staff room but to his office, a small space behind the kitchen that smelled permanently of coffee and industrial cleaning supplies. Sit, please. Elena sat, her mind racing through possibilities. Was she being fired? Promoted? She'd heard whispers from the other staff, seen the way they looked at her now. Some with admiration, others with something closer to resentment. Since the incident with Mr. Bellmont, Roberto began, his fingers nervously adjusting his tie, we've received numerous requests. 3 newspapers want to interview you. Channel 7 called twice. The hotel management wants to feature you in their newsletter. He paused, sliding a stack of messages across the desk. And this came this morning. It was a letter on Bellmont Development Group letterhead, addressed to the hotel management. Elena read it slowly, her hands beginning to shake. Marcus was establishing a fund in her name, the Elena Rodriguez Emergency Response Training Fund, that would pay for CPR and first aid certification for all hotel staff in the city. Furthermore, he was requesting that Elena be made a permanent full-time employee with benefits, or he would reconsider his company's long-standing relationship with the Grandview for corporate events. This puts us in a difficult position, Roberto said carefully. You understand, yes? We value you as an employee, Elena, but Mr. Bellmont essentially threatening us. I didn't ask for this, Elena said quickly. I told him I didn't want anything. I know. That's what makes this complicated. The other staff, some are saying you're getting special treatment. Maria especially feels that with her 15 years here. A knock on the door interrupted them. Tommy the bartender stuck his head in. Sorry, Roberto, but there's a situation. Margaret Ashworth is here, and she's asking for Elena specifically. Elena's stomach dropped. Margaret Ashworth, the senator's wife, who'd stepped back from her as if she were contaminated that night. This couldn't be good. She found Mrs. Ashworth in the hotel's private dining room, impeccably dressed in cream-colored Chanel, her silver hair styled in a perfect chignon. 2 younger women flanked her, her daughter Catherine, who Elena recognized from the society pages, and someone who looked like a lawyer, all sharp edges and professional severity. Ms. Rodriguez, Margaret said, her tone making the name sound like an accusation. Please sit. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Elena remained standing. Is there something I can help you with, Mrs. Ashworth? There certainly is. You can help me understand why my husband received a call from Marcus Bellmont yesterday, strongly suggesting we contribute to your little fund. I didn't ask Mr. Bellmont to. Of course you didn't ask. People like you never ask directly, do you? You just position yourselves, make yourselves indispensable at the right moment, and then wait for the gratitude to flow. Margaret's smile was cold as winter moonlight. I know all about you, Ms. Rodriguez. Single mother, dropped out of college, father was illegal. My father was a citizen, Elena interrupted, heat rising in her chest. He came here legally from Puerto Rico, which is part of the United States, in case you weren't aware. Catherine touched her mother's arm warningly, but Margaret shook her off. Regardless, the point is, I see what you're doing. This hero narrative, this story of the humble waitress who saved the billionaire. It's quite clever, really, but I want you to know that some of us see through it. The woman who looked like a lawyer leaned forward. What my client means to say is that there are questions about your actions that night. Why did you immediately insert yourself into a medical situation? Are you actually certified in CPR, or were you performing procedures you weren't qualified for? If Mr. Bellmont had died, you could have been liable for. He didn't die, Elena said quietly. He lived because Dr. Chen and I acted while everyone else watched. Everyone else was being prudent, Margaret snapped. Not everyone needs to be a hero, Ms. Rodriguez. Some of us understand our place. My place. Elena felt something snap inside her. Some carefully maintained wall between her service self and her real self. My place was apparently keeping your husband alive while you all stood around in your designer gowns watching a man die. My place was knowing what to do because I've taken every free training course this hotel offers, trying to make myself more valuable, more skilled, more worthy of basic respect. My place. Elena. Roberto appeared in the doorway, his face flushed. You're needed in the kitchen. It was an obvious rescue, and Elena took it, walking out without another word, though she could feel Margaret's glare burning into her back. In the kitchen, she leaned against the wall, shaking with rage and something else. Humiliation, perhaps, or just exhaustion from constantly having to justify her existence to people who thought money made them superior. You okay? Tommy asked, appearing with a glass of water. "Fine," Elena lied, drinking deeply. "For what it's worth, Margaret Ashworth is a bitch. Everyone knows it. Last year she tried to get me fired because I put too much ice in her gin and tonic." He paused. "You did good, Elena. Real good. Don't let people like her make you think otherwise." But people like her were everywhere, Elena discovered over the next week. For every person who praised her actions, there was another who questioned them, who suggested she'd overstepped, who implied she was trying to profit from the situation. The story had made the news. Waitress saves billionaire's life at charity gala, and with it came scrutiny she'd never experienced. Reporters called her apartment at all hours. One even showed up at Sophia's kindergarten, trying to get a photo until the principal threatened to call the police. Elena's Instagram, which she barely used, was flooded with messages. Some supportive, others accusatory, a few genuinely threatening. Someone had posted her address online, and she'd started receiving strange mail. Flowers from admirers, business proposals from people wanting to capitalize on her fame, and one disturbing letter that just said, "You should have let him die," over and over in red ink. The situation at work grew increasingly tense. Maria, who'd been at the hotel for 15 years, could barely look at her. During a particularly busy lunch shift, Elena overheard her talking to two other servers. "She's not even that good a waitress, always forgetting orders. But she does CPR once and suddenly she's employee of the month." "That's not fair, Maria," Elena said, unable to stay quiet. "I've never forgotten an order, and you know it." Maria turned, her eyes flashing. "Oh, now you're defending yourself? Where was that voice before, when you were just another girl carrying trays? But now that you're famous, now that you've got Marcus Bellmont protecting you, suddenly you speak up." "I'm the same person I've always been." "No, you're not. You're the waitress who saved the billionaire. You're the one getting a fund named after her. You're the one getting full-time with benefits while the rest of us scramble for shifts." Maria's voice cracked slightly. "My son needs surgery, did you know that? I've been trying to get enough hours to qualify for health insurance for 2 years. But you save one rich man and suddenly doors open." Elena had no response to that because it was true. It wasn't fair. None of it was fair. The breaking point came on a Thursday evening. Elena was serving at a smaller event, a birthday party for a hedge fund manager's wife. She recognized several faces from the gala, saw the way they whispered when she passed. She kept her head down, did her job, tried to be invisible again. But invisibility, once lost, couldn't be reclaimed. She was in the kitchen, loading her tray with champagne glasses, when she heard the scream. Not a startled yelp or a cry of surprise, but a full-throated scream of terror. Elena ran toward the sound, her tray forgotten, and found a crowd gathered around a woman on the floor. It was Catherine Ashworth, Margaret's daughter. She was convulsing, her body rigid, foam at her mouth. Someone was shouting about epilepsy. Another person was trying to hold her down, and Elena immediately knew they were making it worse. "Don't restrain her," Elena shouted, pushing through the crowd. "Move the furniture back. Give her space. Don't touch her." Margaret Ashworth appeared, her face twisted with panic and rage. "Get away from my daughter. She's having a seizure. If you hold her down, she could hurt herself. I said get away." Margaret shoved Elena hard, sending her stumbling backward. Catherine's convulsions continued, her head banging against the hardwood floor. Elena watched in horror as someone tried to force a wallet between her teeth, an old, dangerous myth about preventing tongue swallowing. She tried to move forward again, but Margaret's lawyer friend blocked her path. "You're not a doctor," she said coldly. "You're a waitress. Know your place." So Elena stood there, forced to watch as they did everything wrong. She watched as Catherine's head struck the floor repeatedly because no one thought to cushion it. She watched as they tried to restrain her arms, potentially dislocating her shoulder. She watched and she burned with the knowledge that she could help, that she knew what to do. But they'd rather risk Catherine's safety than accept help from someone they saw as beneath them. The seizure lasted 3 minutes. Elena counted every second. When it finally ended, Catherine was unconscious but breathing, blood trickling from where she'd bitten her tongue. The paramedics arrived soon after, their professional assessment confirming what Elena had tried to tell them. Never restrain someone having a seizure. Protect the head, clear the area, let it run its course. As they loaded Catherine onto a stretcher, Margaret turned to Elena. Her makeup was smeared, her perfect composure shattered, but her hatred was intact. "This is your fault," she hissed. "You've made everyone think they can be heroes. You've disrupted the natural order of things." The natural order? Elena couldn't help but laugh, bitter and exhausted. "You mean the order where people die because no one wants to get their hands dirty? Where your daughter gets hurt because you'd rather listen to prejudice than expertise?" "You're fired," Margaret said. "I'll make sure of it." Roberto appeared, looking miserable. "Mrs. Ashworth, I don't think. The Ashworth Foundation holds 3 major events here every year. Would you like to lose that business?" Elena saw Roberto's face fall, saw the calculation in his eyes. 3 major events versus 1 waitress. It wasn't even a question. "Elena," he said quietly, "perhaps you should go home for the evening." She went, but not quietly. As she gathered her things, she heard Tommy arguing with Roberto, heard Maria of all people saying it wasn't right. But it didn't matter. Margaret Ashworth had power, and power always won. At home that night, after Sophia was asleep, Elena sat at her kitchen table and cried for the first time since the whole ordeal began. She cried for the unfairness of it all, for the cruelty of people who had everything but compassion, for the way trying to do good had somehow made everything worse. Her phone rang. Marcus Bellmont. "I heard what happened," he said without preamble. "Margaret Ashworth is a vindictive fool, and her daughter nearly paid the price for it." "It doesn't matter," Elena said tiredly. "She wins. They always win." "No," Marcus said firmly. "Not this time. Can you meet me tomorrow? There's something I want to show you." Elena wanted to say no, wanted to retreat into anonymity, wanted to pretend the last 2 weeks hadn't happened. But something in Marcus's voice, some steel determination she recognized from her own struggles, made her agree. "Okay," she said. "Where?" "Bellmont Tower, 10th floor. 2 o'clock. And Elena, bring your daughter." The next day, Elena stood outside the gleaming 60-story building in Midtown Manhattan, holding Sophia's hand tightly. Her daughter was dressed in her best outfit, a purple dress from Target that Elena had bought on sale last Easter, and was uncharacteristically quiet, awed by the towering buildings and hurrying crowds. "Is this a castle, Mama?" Sophia whispered. "Something like that, Mija." The lobby of Bellmont Tower was all marble and glass, with a waterfall feature that made Sophia gasp in delight. Security guards in expensive suits nodded respectfully as Elena gave her name, and they were escorted to a private elevator that whisked them to the 10th floor. The doors opened onto a medical facility unlike anything Elena had ever seen. It looked more like a high-end spa than a clinic, soft lighting, comfortable chairs, children's murals on the walls. A receptionist greeted them warmly and led them to a conference room where Marcus waited, still looking pale from his ordeal but dressed impeccably in a navy suit. "Ms. Rodriguez, thank you for coming. And this must be Sophia." He crouched down to Sophia's level, his stern face softening. "I heard you like butterflies." Sophia nodded shyly. Marcus pulled out a small wrapped box. "This is for you. May I?" With Elena's permission, Sophia unwrapped it to reveal a glass butterfly, its wings catching the light in rainbow patterns. Sophia's face lit up. "It's beautiful. Like you," Marcus said, standing. "Elena, let me show you around." He led them through the facility, examination rooms equipped with the latest technology, a teaching center with CPR mannequins, a children's area where sick kids could play while waiting. "This is the Bellmont Employee Health Center," he explained. "Free health care for all my employees and their families. We see about 200 people a day." "It's impressive," Elena said, confused about why she was here. Marcus stopped in front of a door marked Director. "I want to expand. I want to create a training program for emergency responders, not just CPR, but comprehensive first aid, crisis management, the kind of skills that save lives. I want someone to run it who understands both the medical side and the human side." Someone who knows what it's like to be dismissed and overlooked but still does the right thing. Elena's heart began to race. Mr. Bellmont. The position comes with full benefits, a salary of $90,000 to start, flexible hours to accommodate your daughter's schedule, and full tuition coverage if you want to finish your nursing degree. He paused. It also comes with something else, independence from people like Margaret Ashworth. You'd be my employee, not the hotel's. She can't touch you here. Sophia had wandered to the window, pressing her small hands against the glass as she looked out at the city below. Elena watched her daughter, thought about the life she could give her with that kind of security, that kind of opportunity. But doubt crept in. Why? She asked. Is this guilt? Gratitude? I told you I didn't want. It's business, Marcus interrupted. Good business. You saved my life, yes, but more than that, you showed the kind of judgment and courage I want in my organization. I've built this empire by recognizing talent, by finding people who see problems and solve them instead of waiting for permission. That's you, Elena. Before Elena could respond, Marcus's assistant knocked and entered. Sir, there's a situation. Channel 7 is here, and Margaret Ashworth is in the lobby giving an interview about unqualified individuals performing medical procedures. Marcus's face darkened. Is she now? He turned to Elena. This is what I mean. She's trying to destroy you because you made her look bad. Are you going to let her? Elena looked at Sophia, still mesmerized by the view, then back at Marcus. What do you want me to do? Fight back. Tell your side. Stop letting them control the narrative. 20 minutes later, Elena found herself in the lobby facing a news camera, her hands sweating but her voice steady. Margaret stood nearby, her lawyer beside her, clearly not expecting Elena to appear. Mrs. Rodriguez, the reporter, a young woman named Jennifer Chen, began. Mrs. Ashworth has suggested you acted recklessly at the gala. How do you respond? Elena took a breath. I respond by saying that I'm certified in CPR through the American Red Cross. I recertify every year. I've taken additional courses in emergency response because in my neighborhood, in my world, we can't always wait for help to arrive. We have to be ready to help each other. But you're not a medical professional, Margaret interjected. You're a waitress. You're right, Elena said, turning to face her directly. I am a waitress. I'm also a mother, a daughter, a woman who's worked 3 jobs at once to pay rent. I'm someone who's been invisible to people like you, my entire life. But when your husband was choking at that fundraiser 2 years ago, Mrs. Ashworth, I was the waitress who performed the Heimlich maneuver while you screamed. When Judge Patterson's grandson had an allergic reaction at the Christmas party, I was the one who recognized the signs and got his EpiPen. I've been saving lives in small ways for years. You just never noticed because I didn't matter to you until Marcus Bellmont made me matter. The lobby had gone silent. Even the security guards were watching. Margaret's face had turned an unhealthy shade of red. Last night, Elena continued, her voice growing stronger. Your daughter had a seizure. I tried to help, knew exactly what to do, but you stopped me because you couldn't bear the thought of owing me twice. Your pride could have seriously hurt Catherine. And that's the real problem here. Not that I overstepped, but that you can't stand the fact that someone you see as beneath you had the power to save a life when you could only watch. How dare you? Margaret began. No. Marcus stepped forward, his presence immediately commanding attention. How dare you, Margaret? You're conducting a witch hunt against the woman who saved my life because she exposed your own inadequacy. You're trying to destroy her reputation because she made you confront the fact that your money, your connections, your social standing, none of it matters when someone is dying on the floor. He turned to the camera. I'm establishing the Elena Rodriguez Foundation for Emergency Response Training. We'll provide free certification courses to service workers across the city, waitstaff, janitors, security guards, the people who are always there but rarely seen. Because when crisis strikes, it doesn't care about your net worth or your family name. It only cares about who's prepared to act. The reporter was scribbling frantically. Mr. Bellmont, are you saying? I'm saying that Elena Rodriguez represents the best of what this city can be. Prepared, courageous, and unwilling to let someone die just because helping them might be inconvenient or inappropriate. He looked directly at Margaret. And if anyone, anywhere, tries to punish her for that, they'll answer to me and my legal team. Margaret left without another word, her lawyer trailing behind. The reporter got a few more statements before Elena finally escaped, her head spinning. In the elevator going back up, Sophia looked up at her. Mama, why was that lady so angry? Elena thought about how to explain prejudice, classism, and wounded pride to a 5-year-old. Sometimes, Mija, people get angry when their ideas about the world get challenged. Like when Tommy at school said girls couldn't be astronauts, and then Miss Peterson showed him a picture of lady astronauts? Exactly like that. Back in Marcus's office, Elena finally gave him an answer about the job. Yes, but on one condition. The training program includes a scholarship fund for participants to pursue further medical education if they want. Not everyone, but for those who show aptitude and dedication. Marcus smiled, the first genuine smile she'd seen from him. Done. When can you start? Elena started the following Monday. Her first day included orientating herself to the medical center, meeting the staff, and beginning to outline the curriculum for the training program. She hired Maria from the hotel as her assistant coordinator, someone who understood the service industry's demands and deserved a second chance. 6 months later, the Rodriguez Foundation had trained over 3,000 workers. Elena finished her nursing degree at night, with Marcus's company covering every expense. Sophia thrived in her new school, made friends, and still treasured her glass butterfly. The real victory wasn't the salary or the stability, though those mattered immensely. It was the way Elena walked through the world now, visible, valued, no longer apologizing for taking up space. She'd learned that heroism wasn't just about dramatic rescues. It was about refusing to accept that some lives mattered more than others. On the anniversary of Marcus's cardiac arrest, Elena stood in the training center watching a class of janitors and security guards practice chest compressions. Somewhere in the city, one of them would face their own moment of crisis. And because of what happened that October night, they'd be ready. Some stories don't end. They multiply. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel.